I think it's maybe going now. Yeah, we're live, right?
No, I'm still seeing you as before.
But it has this little sign, Eduardo, that it says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. So it pops up on our screens.
Yes, I see
So
it.
okay,
I see it.
so we're live.
It's live.
And I have you here on YouTube already.
Okay, so with that, I want to stop talking. I defer to Karsten, who will take it from here. Everyone, welcome.
Okay, so go. So let's not go.
What can be more fascinating than social evolution? Why do animals live alone? Why do they live in groups? How do they deal with social conflict? And how did this biodiversity of social systems we observe in the animal kingdom evolve? My name is Carsten Schradin. I'm a director of research at CNRS in Strasbourg, France, and I've been studying striped mice in South Africa for 20 years, a species that can be grouped or solitary living. My vision for this conference is to meet every week with people from all over the world online to listen to exciting talks about the social evolution, to discuss them, and to have a lot of fun together.
Hi, my name is Lauren Hayes. I'm a faculty member at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and co-host of the seminar series on social evolution. I'm looking forward to having people get together, share their research on social evolution, and envision that this is an opportunity for junior scientists, people of underrepresented minority groups, and also people from poorer countries to showcase their research on social evolution.
How are males and females similar or different in what they bring to different types of social organization? How do they compete with other individuals? How do they share in the care of the young? I'm Eduardo Fernandez Duque, professor of anthropology at Yale University in the USA. I'm a co-host of the seminar on social evolution with Karsten Schradin and Lauren Hayes. For 25 years in Argentina and Ecuador, we have studied teas, sakis, and owl monkeys to explore some of the questions. Through this seminar, we will have plenty of opportunities for understanding the contributions that comparative studies, sometimes spanning several generations over a whole range of animal taxa, have made to the understanding of social evolution. I hope you will join us.
Yes, good morning, USA. Good afternoon, Europe, and wherever else you are joining us from the world. I greet you for today's Fine, where we will discuss the past and the future of Fine, which is now in its 5th year, its 10th season. And we would like to discuss with you whether Fine did bring benefits to the scientific community, what it bring to you individually, and if there's anything we can change in the future or what are the good things to keep. So the Fine online seminar started in 2020 as a consequence of the COVID pandemic when we were had to stay at home. The idea came originally from me, and I asked Lauren Hayes, who cannot be here today, to join me, who then suggested that we also get Eduardo on board, and then later Adriana. So it's the 4 organizers of us who are organizing this weekly seminar now in its 5th year. During Corona, everybody was happy to join us on weekly meetings to discuss science. We had at the end of 2020, the first season, 273 registered participants from 5 continents and 28 countries. And now, even though the pandemic is over for some years, it increased to 790 registered participants from 6 continents and 39 countries. However, live attendance, not surprisingly, went down. At the beginning, we had 80 to 100 people watching the Fine live. At the moment, it's rather something like 40. And this caused us to question whether there's something we can or should change, or whether there are some strengths that we should just keep on going. Here you see another graph I made this morning of the people from all over the world that are joining the FINE community within the email list. You see most people actually are from Europe, followed by North America, while South America and Asia, also because of problems of time differences, we have less people that are subscribed to FINE. But important thing here is that even though live attendance decreased over the years, the number of people worldwide from many different countries that are subscribed to FINE and that join FINE in one or the other way has increased. Like I said, it's in its 10th season. We have, including this season, 150 talks, including several special finds and panels. We had 77 male and 82 female presenters. And these on a wide range of taxa. Not all the talks are included here. We had microbes, amoeba, insects, spiders, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and birds, but we're quite a bias towards mammals. I think this is simply due to the reasons that all the three of the four FINE organizers work on mammals, and only one, Adriana, mainly works on birds. But we tried from the beginning, because we're interested in social evolution in a broad way, to include all possible taxa. We also have this YouTube page. Interestingly, here we have more subscribers into our email list, 1,530 subscribers. I went into the statistics today. Over the years, we had more than 56,000 views. Of course, you don't know when somebody clicks on it, whether the person disappears immediately or not. But it was also viewed on YouTube for more than 9,000 hours. So this is not something that people just go through. Interestingly, and maybe importantly, is that 90% of the viewers were below the age of 35. Sometimes older people like me, or maybe other sites, might say, okay, maybe this is really not meaningful, YouTube and so on. But for the much younger generation, it seems to be important. And also interestingly is that most of these viewers are not subscribers to the channel. At least the first time they view, and they might then subscribe to it. So we might have really a different community, which is like a black box for us, because we never meet these people that also benefit from FINE, from looking at it on YouTube. We have different FINE resources. We have a homepage where you can access all of them. We have quick finds on YouTube also, where students made short summaries as videos about previous FINE talks. We have teaching slides you can include when you're teaching animal behavior. We have a paper published in Ethology, how to use FINE itself for teaching. And also on the homepage, this is described in detail. And there's the reading list put together. Every FINE presenter can suggest 3 of his or other papers to read, which provides a very fine list of interesting papers to go through. For example, if you want to do a journal club. So in conclusion, FINE was born out of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, but it survived the pandemic. And while its number of live views declined as the pandemic ended, the number of direct and online subscribers continued to increase, which indicates to me that it's still of value for many people that are attending the FINE either live or later on YouTube. And like I said, today we want to discuss whether this is really the case and if there's anything we can further improve. And with this, I'm handing over to Eduardo, who will show you, did I stop? I can stop the screening, which will share with you the results of the survey that we had sent around for today's discussion.
Thank you, Karsten. But what I'd like to do first, since this is a little bit how we discussed it, and we're only about 20 people, we might as well, if any of you have any questions right now, I mean, some of you, I think you've only been attending FINE recently. If you want to either introduce yourself or just have some questions on what Karsten said, we might as well do it now. We really want to have this be it's a meeting of 20 people. So Adriana, you're muted if you're talking to me. I couldn't hear what you were. So anybody has any questions or comments on Karsten's opening remarks? No. Okay, then, well, yes, Theo. Go ahead, Theo. Yes, sorry first, and we're gonna do it Latin American style. Just jump in. I mean, wave your hand and move in. Sari was first, and then Theo. Sari?
Okay.
I wanted to say that when Karsten said that the FINE audience went from 80 people to 40 during the FINE seminars, like the Zoom part, I still think it's pretty impressive, 40 people after the pandemic. So I don't think we should be too hard on us having lost half of the audience. 40 is still pretty good, I would say. So yeah.
I agree with this, especially it's not quantity only that counts, but also quality. Many of the people that come contribute to the discussion and they're regulars, and it's a for 40 is quite a big group still, I think.
Thank you, Sari. I need to hear that from others because I'm one of the ones who sometimes struggle with we drawing enough of a crowd, but Karsten keeps reminding me, and rightly so, that quality on so many aspects of my life, I give priority to quality over quantity. And so, Theo, you're next.
Yeah, CEO. I'm CEO University of Bonn. I was wondering how much competition there is for FINE. Do you know of any seminars who are running online only?
Please, somebody help us with that. Adriana?
I can help with that. There is 2 seminars, not directly on social evolution, but they also started during the pandemic. It's the theoretical ecology seminar that still runs, I think it's once a month. They have also like an email list and they send out the invitation as well. And then there is another one on networks, but that, yeah, it's mostly on methods and still runs. It also started around, I would say 2021 probably. It was later, but those are the 2 ones that I keep
What
track of.
happened?
And
What
there's
happened with
one
the long-term research?
I just looked at it. They stopped something like 3 years ago. The youngest video is something like 3 years old, but there's still But I have to admit I never attended it. That maybe Adriana, is that the one you mentioned from the Royal Society? They also have a seminar series that still occurs sometimes of some of their papers.
The Royal Society, I know they do have a seminar, but it's not the one I'm thinking or I refer to. The one that they have that I'm aware of, it's like a regular seminar about papers. And then there's another one from the Lineal Society as well. But they didn't come up with the COVID, nor to my knowledge, with the purpose of keeping communities together. Whereas the theoretical ecology appeared during the pandemic itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this? If not, I'll move on to sharing what. So thank you so much. I was gladly surprised that we had, there were still some responses coming into the survey yesterday. So we're now closer to 50 than 40 something. So I felt like, wow, that's good. I mean, and we're not offering any discounts or upgrades on the phone. I mean, there were no rewards. So thank you all for spending some time. That's why we share the responses with you. What I want to do now is just show you, I'm assuming that some of you may not have had time to go over this survey we sent you. So just a couple of things. And again, here the spirit is that I may show a slide, and then if something, I don't like keeping an eye on hands being raised with a drawing, or I just cannot do it. I don't have the wingspan, but just interrupt me. So these are the responses. This is one of the first summaries. It looks like or more than 50% of people who responded are really attending to a substantial number of seminars. Then this one was, of course, I keep telling myself and the students that we have come up with a wonderful example of an absolutely completely biased sample of respondents. But that's okay. We needed to hear all the wonderful things you had to say. So most people think that actually pretty much like, what is that? Like 97% of respondents gave it a 4 or a 5. And we should just live with that. Teaching. Not many of us are using it. And here, let me see, I'm not seeing you guys. There you go. Now I see you. We've done a few things, but again, it's one of those things that doing more on teaching takes time. Remember, a quick comment on Fine. It was very interesting. A year ago or something like that, we opened, it was last fall, that we had a kind of a special first seminar, and we did a raffle. And many of you donated books. And one of the authors assumed that Fine has funding and that we would be paying for the shipment of the books. None of us have a single penny for running the series. So any new initiative, either we need to come up with the time or the money to buy the time. Comments on teaching. One of the things I want to share is something that I've done it's not formally structured around Fine, but what's happened to me is that already 3 or 4 times I visited my colleague's classroom for just, we did it with Adriana. Adriana would say, Eduardo, can you just jump in for 20 minutes, half hour during my behavioral ecology course? And it was so easy because the students had already seen the recorded talk, they know my work. There wasn't really a lot of preparation for me, and I invite you to consider that. Next fall, I'm teaching a course on fathers and fatherhood, evolution and behavior, and I still need to reach out to the 10 or 11 people, Fine speakers who presented on paternal care, and I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to tell them, hey, we're going to be reading your work. Could you stop by class for 20 minutes? So that's my own experience with teaching. Anyone?
Yeah, I can also comment on that. I've been using it to encourage the students or kind of teach them by their own experience on how to engage in a safe environment. So asking questions. So during my behavioral ecology course, I also have them as an assignment to come to one of the seminars, and they have to ask a question always. And so that makes them practice English. They get over the fear of talking in public, being recorded as well. And then they report back to me. So I think that's another way. It's a little bit more relaxed, I would say. But it also tackles different skills that we don't have when we get out of school. Yeah.
Anyone else who's used in any indirect or direct? Yes, Maren, please.
I've used it mostly at a very low level. So my name is Maren Hook. I'm at the University of Derby in the UK. So the option of inviting in people is probably a little bit more narrowed if I'm referring to somebody from the States, because if my session starts at 9 o'clock in the morning in the UK, then it's in the middle of the night for you. Obviously, there would be people in Europe or Africa that would be, or Asia that would potentially be possible. But what I've mostly done is I have either referred to links. So I've said this Fine seminar that was either is coming up next week or was a couple of weeks ago or was 3 years ago is really relevant to this particular session. Here's the link. But I've also used directly in a session short. So if there was no short version of the whole talk, I just went, for example, to the one from Tim Clotton-Brock. I went to minute, 25 to 30 or so, and just showed them the part that was relevant in that time period. And then there was also a very nice short pre-recorded thing by Carsten, which I used, and then a couple of weeks ago I did that and had completely forgotten that he had talked over it, and I was just annoyed why the pointer was moving all the time and the sound hadn't come on until a student told me perhaps you just need to switch on the voiceover. But that was also very nice because it really fitted very well into what I was talking about in that session, so I could just use a little bit of additional stuff in the session, and they don't have to hear me talking all the time, can hear somebody else talking as well.
Now that you mentioned the small videos, Maren, I want to also comment. So Lauren and I have been collaborating on doing quick finds. So we pair students from his class and my class, and together they have to do a quick find. So that's another way to build collaborations across different countries from different backgrounds and so on. And yeah, so that's the other way we use it.
Suleima?
Yeah, I'm in a different situation, of course, because I'm retired. And so I'm not teaching as such anymore. But back in 1974, when I first came to the University of Missouri, St. Louis, I started it's called the Animal Behavior Discussion Group, or ABDG, which is sort of like a journal club, but very flexible and very informal. And I have certainly used information from Fine. I take notes almost always. And so things that really strike me, sometimes similar topics come up in our discussions. And I've used information from Fine on a fairly routine basis where, hey guys, I heard this fascinating seminar, or with regards to this topic, I just heard in Fine, and tell them what the information is. But the other thing that I've done, and this is not teaching, but I've gotten my department to invite a few people, not that many, but a few people from Fine to give Zoom seminars, especially while we were still in the middle of the pandemic. And Sari, for example, came and spoke to our eco lunch or bio lunch on one occasion, and it was based on my having heard her in Fine and deciding that she would be an interesting speaker for our department. And so I think those are other ways that we can use Fine.
Good. So the next graph I have, this was which component Fine do you find most interesting or useful? So remember that blue is the most interesting. So if we just take the speaker presentation, well, let's start with that one because we thought it was quite unusual compared to the other components. It's very bimodal. So a very good number, 16 people gave it a 1 to speaker presentation, but 17 of them. So people either loved or did not really like a lot the speaker presentation. That's the one of the components that's more bimodal. But you can see then how people feel about. I mean, it's evenly distributed regarding the discussions. For me, that was interesting because I value the discussion sometimes even more than the presentation. The readings, people are kind of in between with a 3 and a 2. And then, yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments or interpretations you make of this data, it's something we talk about a lot. We're still going for 2 hours, as you will know. The first hour, the speaker presents, and then we have a full hour of questions and answers. That, of course, we see many after the pandemic. That's also something that dropped. During the pandemic, many more people would stay for the 1 hour discussion. After the pandemic, many people leave after the presentation. But we still end up always with discussions that have anywhere, I would say, between 10 and 15 people who stay solid for a good chunk of time. Any comments or questions?
I mean, I'm wondering whether for the first one, whether some people might have gotten it wrong and think the highest is the best. Or it could also be that if I would have filled it out, I would have ranked the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and give 1 or 1, 1 or 2, 1 or 3. And that for a seminar, there obviously is some speaker presentation that doesn't make Fine special to other seminars because every seminar has it. Maybe that's the reason why people said, yeah, okay, of course there are speakers, but the discussion and then the reading, that's what makes Fine out. And this is why I ranked this higher. And in the end, there's only the 5 left for the speaker because that's not that. Of course, we have top speakers, but it doesn't make our seminar special because every seminar has speakers.
Anyone, please? It'd be great today
Yeah,
to hear from everyone. Yes?
Yeah, for me, I think what really makes Fine different and special, I mean, I love the presentations themselves, but what really makes it special, I think, are the discussions, because I don't know of any other setting where you can, spend an hour just discussing and going back and forth and asking as many questions as you want. And I think that's makes Fine very, very different. And sometimes, occasionally, especially at the beginning, we would even go longer after the hour officially ended, and I love those because it's in a totally informal situation. You can say whatever you want, and I found that the most to me at least the most valuable and interesting part of Fine.
Anne-Marie, did you unmute yourself? Go ahead, please.
I did.
And if you can, we know you, but just in case, introduce yourself to those who may not have met you.
So yeah, my name is Anne-Marie van der Marel. I'm a postdoc now. I switched institute, so I'm now a postdoc at the Institute of Ecology and Biodiversity in Chile. So for me, like the Fine has been like very great because the last 2 years we didn't really have seminars at the university. So to still be in contact with like the whole community and everything, and to get that have that feedback and like be part of the scientific community has been very valuable. And I think for this is like the speaker presentations. I have to admit that I also first thought like, oh, 5 is most interesting. So I maybe think that the 5 and 1 are like reversed for some people. But to me, like the speaker presentation is those are so necessary for the discussion. So you cannot really to me, like if I really enjoyed the presentation, I would also be more invested in the discussion and vice versa. So for me, that is they're really connected to in my opinion.
Thank you. Do I see anyone who's unmuted? Himself? Okay. Then what do I have next? What would make Fine finer? So we wanted to hear from you, and this was interesting. Definitely we needed to have some feedback on these things. So once again, opinions are even on terms of more speaker diversity, more taxonomic diversity, tons, many 2s and 3s. There seems like mechanism of social evolution. Something that the organizers have talked again and again is how much flexibility do we want to allow ourselves around what do we mean by social evolution? And kind of jokingly, I've always said that, well, we allow ourselves the right to decide on the flexibility depending on what we want to have. But Karsten was saying that maybe we should be more open to things that are even less directly related to social evolution per se. I mean, so these are things that there were suggestions about it, and we'll ponder them. Then in relationship to that, I mean, we have been thinking, should we have topics outside social evolution, conservation, population biology? I'm sorry, Magen, you were going to say something? The other thing is how we can, the time zone is fascinating. We have colleagues sometimes joining us from, Magen, you were saying you're in the UK, but when we have our colleagues joining us from Australia or India, I mean, some of our colleagues have been so generous with their time, agreeing to present at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So one of the ideas as communicating here is how can we open Fine to more geographical regions? By that we mean, do we want to start thinking about possibilities that will make it more compatible with people's lives in, say, Australia or India than an 11 p.m. meeting? And then informal discussions groups like this one. We've had a few. I think that the panels, we had now, what, 3, 4, 5 panels that was more informal. Comments or thoughts or questions on this? I don't really have much more than any of you can say. Yes, Ari, go.
Sometimes I think that the discussion is a bit too rigid and it's difficult to manage. So if we were actually in the same room, it would be more back and forth because we would see one another, and like the facial expressions or the raising a hand would make the discussion more between people than just the speaker and the person that asked the question, right? Because sometimes something pops up and then someone else has kind of a follow-up question. But given that we do it with like the symbol in the chat, it might be that we have two other questioners before we can actually ask the question. So I don't know how to actually manage that, but I think that if something can be done, if like by raising a hand during a question so that a follow-up can be inserted in there, could be a bit more dynamic than what we are doing. But I do understand that it's not that easy to do.
How about this? And let me share briefly this transformative experience I had a month ago. I organized a conference at Yale on fathers and fatherhood. And the first call, I had 10 speakers invited from all over the world. So I was going for 10 presentations, 10 PowerPoints, 10 abstracts, our usual scientific approach. And because we wanted to have a conference that had also a much more advocacy applied component to issues of fatherhood, I ran the ideas through some colleagues. Some of you may know them. I don't know if anyone is in the Netherlands, but I had colleagues from the Van Leer Foundation that does a lot of philanthropy on childcare. And they say, dude, I mean, I know you guys do this all the time, but it puts people down to sleep. We have to keep it more dynamic, which is what Sari said. And so what we did is, instead of a presentation, we have 3 panels, 3 people talking for a few minutes, talking to each other. And now I'm going to what if we try this in fine? And then we passed the conversation to the tables in the conference. People were sitting around tables, groups of 6 or 8. Here we could use breakout rooms. What if we try once, we have the presentation by the speaker, then we send people to breakout rooms to discuss the presentation among themselves. Of course, the speaker can only be in one of those breakout rooms. And then the breakout rooms come back to a wide audience discussion. So that would give in smaller groups more opportunity for this kind of dynamic Sari you're suggesting. Still thinking about what the speaker said, still coming up with questions that now that this small group wants to raise. We never know. When we start trying these things, God knows how it's going to go. But we're a community. If we all feel like, let's give it a shot. Adriana?
Yeah, I was thinking that since we are using also codes for students to give them priority, we could use like a queue plus in parentheses follow-up as they are coming. So if we're discussing one question and then we get a queue follow-up, we might call that person. So we follow up on that question specifically, and then we keep going with the list of participants. That could be one. It will require us to be aware of who has done the question, and it will be a little bit more on the logistics side, but I think it's doable, and we could implement that very easily and see how it goes in one of our seminars.
Since we are in an exploration phase, I have opened right here my tab. How do people feel? I'll do a very quick survey. I can, with a click, assign randomly all of you to say, how many are we? We're 15. I could, like, the click end up sending us all to 3 different rooms of 5 people each. Are people interested in us trying this just for getting a feel of the mechanics? We have a conversation among 4 or 5 of us about anything we want to discuss about fine, and then we come back. It occurred to me now. How do people feel? Raise your hand. You have to know this is not going to be an anonymous vote. How Karsten and Adriana feel about this? We can try it for just send people to a room for 5 minutes for the mechanic, even if it is just trying the mechanics. Will said yes. Will, you are the only one who raised the hand. But that's interesting. Remember that we're talking all the time that we're not hearing enough from students. And so, Will, may I ask you, since I know you, will you please introduce yourself? And we need more
Hi,
students. Yes, go ahead.
hi everyone. My name is Will. I'm a student at Yale underneath Vanessa Ezenwa. I'm the one who's, co-opting the questions with the S after the question mark and jumping the line all the time. But yeah, I think the FIND seminar has been a really useful resource to get a pulse for where behavioral ecology is at. I'm at a relatively large R1 institution in the United States. We have weekly seminars, but they're on topics from molecular biology to evolutionary trajectories of fish that I don't care about, and I think the weekly seminars that are on a specific set of topics, I think have been really useful, both for connecting me to new research themes and animal behavior, but then also trying to understand where my kind of questions fall in the broader scope of behavioral ecology. And I found them extremely useful, and it's also been nice to get to interact with a much broader set of more senior scientists and that kind of thing, get a sense for where people's questions are, that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted me to say or talk about it, or no?
But I think you are an example of how sometimes the small things that Vine has built take a while to show. It was through Vine. Vanessa had already been at Yale. Vanessa Zengwa had already been at Yale for a year, and I had not met her. And so Lauren invited her to give a talk. I met Vanessa. Now we're colleagues. We talk, and it was last week that we were saying, because there's no really a strong behavioral program at Yale. We don't have anyone doing, except me, myself, and David Watts. Nobody else is studying animal behavior in the wild. So now through FINE, we're now talking and planning on getting together and getting all of the behavioral ecologists in Vanessa's group and mine to have a little bit of a community on campus. And that it started with FINE.
And I think this has been a discussion point for another kind of seminar around like disease ecology, where even though you're at your big institution, there may only be one or two behavioral ecologists in an entire department. And I think these kinds of communities do a really nice job of connecting people across departments in a way that serves them, that they're not getting served even by a relatively large, research institution, that kind of thing.
Will, what do you think? Any other grad students in the audience right now? I'm looking around. Any other grads? What if I ask you for your suggestions, ideas? I felt like I keep asking myself, why don't we have more grad students attending FINE? You belong in those demographics. Thoughts, ideas, things that you think we should explore.
Perfect. Did you want to say something?
I was asking Will. I don't know who is answering, but I wanted to hear from you, Will, if you have any thoughts on what we could
Perfect
do.
is a student, and he just had raised his hand, but you probably didn't see it. He's under Escara S.
Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Perfect from Second Karoo Research Station. I'm currently doing my honors now. And one thing that I've just wanted to add is I don't know if there would be a better way to sort of reach wider community in a way that or a possible way to advertise seminar, because like for example myself, like I just started knowing it this year because Kirsten introduced it to me, but like in my own opinion, I wish like I had knew it before before now, in the way that I've been or I was gonna be able to attend like a lot of them compared to the few that I've attended this year. Thank you.
I was going to say oh, sorry.
I was just thinking at the beginning we advertised it a lot and we stopped this a bit. But the problem is that of course young students coming up like Perfect, like other students, they will not have the advertisement we did 3, 4, 5 years ago. So we might have to do it really all the time, writing to the Eto News, right? Doing every season something via all the email newsletters, and do it again and again, because the new young students coming up, they might otherwise not find it. I was just thinking about this. Why does Perfect not know it? I mean, I had posted it on the side of the South African Zoological Society at the beginning, but then I didn't do it anymore, and that's a shortcoming of us organizers. Sometimes thinking you advertise it so often there, but there's new people coming, the new generation. They will not have seen his previous posts.
Yeah.
I think there's another point there, and it's we often get students coming, but they don't stay. So they come to 1 or 2 talks, but they don't stay. They don't come more regularly, and that's something that we have also been thinking, like, why does this happen? What could be happening there? I don't know. Well, maybe Lindelani, and I also see Nelson around, so maybe you have ideas on that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nelson Galvis. Just graduated from Universidad de los Andes. I think for your answer, Adriana, I think most of the people that come out to the FINE seminars, they come to see one taxa that are interested on. I think some people of my lab, they came for the primates talks. That is it. And other friends for the birds talks, and they don't show up anymore because they are not really interested on social behavior evolution. It's just they are interested on one specific tax. I think that is the why they don't show up anymore.
It's good to know. Yeah.
Go, Anna-Marie, go.
I also think that for a lot of students, like they might watch it on the YouTube or watch it the video back, but then still like the level to actually join Zoom is maybe still a little like, yeah, too scary. And because I remember when I first started, I just looked at Zoom and I finally just like, I think I could, on the YouTube, I mean, and then finally like I should join the Zoom group actually. And so maybe a lot of students still have that and then kind of like stop watching YouTube or again and just like stop altogether. Yeah.
Also, I think one of the aspects is that I have friends that they come sometimes to the meetings, but when the time change in Europe or in the States, it's not possible because they didn't match with their schedules. That is it. Another answer for that.
Nelson, Will, where are you? Yeah. One of the Karsten, we need to make a note of reminding students every season. I agree with you, but we get excited. We have make all these plans, and then just let me remind you, we have no staff support and then we don't get to do all the things we'd like to do. But again and again, we've been talking about ideas, and one that I think we had discussed a few times, or I think I know, I'm going to speak for myself. I always felt, could we get a number of young colleagues, also known as students, who say, listen, I'm going to take it. I'm going to create some space for me to have the opportunity to meet for half an hour, not even an hour, with a number of fine speakers, fine presenters outside of this. So what I sometimes feel is like, and maybe this is the change in how humans are communicating these days, but I don't see the students as eager as we were in making personal connections, personal dialogues, networking. What you get in the YouTube talk is great, but you have that in the papers, you have that in Wikipedia, and I'm not exaggerating. What you do, what Wikipedia doesn't give you, what the papers don't give you, is getting to know the person as a human being. And I don't know what to do. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned, and the future will tell us that people are no, I'm not kidding, really. Maybe it won't happen. But the truth is that at the end of the day, what I can tell you, it does happen because I am on the side of those who are hiring you. You're not there yet. Is that for whatever reason, people will not tell you because we're not allowed to say that we want to meet him in person and say why. I mean, just look at the CD and the papers. Well, it doesn't work like that. And whoever tells you that at Yale, they're lying. The truth is that they're right. I mean, it's BS. So it's profoundly based on the humane impression you make on people when they meet you. Sorry. And we can have a philosophical conversation about whether it should be or shouldn't, but it is. And Zuleyma is not in agreement, and she's been around even longer than I have. So, but I don't see the students seeking that.
Yeah, but Eduardo, when you say how we were, you might have the wrong group in mind. Let's be honest, of the students, 5% stay in science, 95% do something else, and they do something else in their life as a PhD student, as a postdoc as well. Like for many students at my department, they have a seminar once a week, department seminar 1 hour. There they go, mainly for social reasons, and then another seminar would be too much for them. So again, quantity and quality is not the same. So I would say on average, the students that come here and stay here are students where you also see are the ones most likely to continue in science. And I always say when students are not interested in the science, other people do. So why would they expect anyone is interested in their science? And I mean, in the end, there are only so many permanent positions, and you see the difference between the ones who will continue and the ones who do something else.
Zuleyma, were you going to? You had unmuted yourself.
Well, I was just thinking. I think that just from my own experience, and I haven't taught now for about a little bit over 10 years, but I don't think things have changed. But I find that our graduate students are incredibly busy. And so it's hard to take extra time off. But the other dynamic, and this is completely off the top of my head, I have no data to show this at all, but I remember when I was a graduate student that I attended sometimes talks in other departments just because I thought that they were interesting, seminars. And I've always been a champion of interdisciplinary and, like the student who was talking about the fact that people only come when it's the taxon that they're interested in that is being talked about. And I think for me, one of the things that has been the most exciting and interesting in my life as an academic is that, I worked on rodents primarily and other small mammals. My students worked on small mammals and, rodents and a few other things. But I have always found work on other taxa that I don't work on to be absolutely fascinating. And I think it brings insights into my thinking. And in my teaching, I always took a very broad approach, which I didn't realize at the time. But there were postdocs who had been at other universities and told me that in their animal behavior class, they talked essentially about whatever taxon the professor happened to work on, and not on anything else. And I just found that totally amazing, because to me, what it's all about, and the reason that I think I like FINE so much, is that it does talk about, we do have papers on insects, on amoeba, on, fish, and on all sorts of taxa. And I think that richness and that diversity is what makes me so passionate about animal behavior and about being a biologist and trying to see the parallels and the differences and why. And so I think there's perhaps in training, I'm not sure, but I think perhaps in modern training, students are expected to specialize so much on a given taxon or on a given area of research that they don't have the time, and they also, I don't think, have the encouragement to develop an interest in other areas. Like a lot of you know that I'm really also interested in the history of biology and obviously animal behavior. And maybe this also comes from the fact that, you know, I was a hybrid in terms of my training. I had Steve Glickman as a major advisor, and he was a comparative psychologist at Berkeley. And then in the zoology department, it's now integrative biology, but at that, when I was a graduate student, there were separate departments. And so I was technically in the Department of Zoology, and I got my degree in my PhD in zoology, but I was working in head offices and was attending seminars and interacting with people, both in zoology and in psychology. And I think that has made a huge difference in the way that I look at the world and I look at things and I look at science. But I don't think those sorts of interdisciplinary and not just interdisciplinary within academia, but just broader interests, you know, philosophy, history, those sorts of things are really encouraged. And moreover, the students are so busy trying to get finished that they don't have the time to pursue those interests if they happen to have them. But again, this is just, you know, I've thought about this for a long time, but I don't really have data to show it.
I think this gets,
Sorry,
for me,
can we-
at training.
Jane,
Can you
I'm
hear
gonna,
me?
sorry, Jane, give me a
Sorry.
second, because I
Yeah.
have a hard time keeping track, and I apologize to Sari. Sari, you raised your hand, and I didn't see it. So we'll go with Sari first, then Jane, and my apologies that I'm not good at multitasking. So Sari first, then Jane.
Thank you, Eduardo. I was gonna kind of get back at the part of networking and persons that are in positions of searching a job. And I was for a long time, and to be perfectly honest, and this is rather personal, I never found a job within academia to do what I like to do. And so thinking that FINE is kind of a platform from which you can network. Of course, you can network because obviously you get to know people and people get to know you, especially if you were invited as a speaker, which was the case, was my case, right? So I got this advantage, but it didn't take me to kind of, oh, now I have a job. And perhaps you have to wonder then, if you think that FINE can be like a jumping board, how many of you who are in the positions of being in the hiring process have actually hired a person that you met through FINE? It's like there are so few positions available in academia that I doubt that there is one FINE participant who got hired because of FINE. And so I think that we have to recognize the limits of academia and the hiring process and so forth. And so that thinking that grad students should, or it would be beneficial for them to participate in FINE because it will be beneficial for them to get potentially a job, is a bit too utopian, I believe. And this is my personal vision because it didn't work for me. But we have to recognize the limits of academia and also all that thing. Yes.
Jane?
Well, I'm kind of following up in Zulima's talk about broadness, and I think it's part of the whole training. The biggest struggle I have with students writing their thesis or papers and manuscripts is that they don't get broad in their discussion. So they just start talking ground squirrels or, okay, I'm Jane Waterman. I'm in biology at the University of Manitoba, Canada. I should put that in there. But it's like frustrating. It's like they don't know how to look at bigger patterns. And I think the discussions in FINE have really brought in that. It may not be a portal for jobs, but certainly it's a portal of connecting. And those sorts of thinking and connecting when you go for job interviews or you go to conferences will make those connections. You get used to kind of thinking in a broader way. And I think that's missing because people are pushing to get their thesis written in 4 years. And yes, the funding is limited and whatever, but it's important for people to be able to look at patterns in the universe around us. And you don't look at those patterns unless you can take a step back and say, oh my gosh, these amoebas are doing the same thing my ground squirrel groups are doing, and make those connections in your writing and in your research. And I just think that's an important part. And how to encourage students. I know my students, they go and they watch the YouTube sometimes, but if there's a talk I really want, I'm just emailing them every day saying, you should go to FINE, you should be going to FINE. And they just don't prioritize because something is always coming up. They have to grade for TA or whatever. But I do think that that broader aspect will feed back into job possibilities, just not directly, but there's so much indirect that's going on. But you have to kind of push.
Anne-Marie, you're next.
Yeah, and I maybe not so much for job opportunities, but also just thinking about like having to write grants and everything, just to get like your brain kind of out of like what you're currently working on and more again like, okay, what is out there? Like, where can I go next? And I think that's is like FINE is very valuable for that, field.
Maren?
A little bit to what Sari said, but it also links with what Carsten said. So we had a student who was one of my undergraduate students at Derby University, Eleanor, and she created actually the first short FINE, and she was one of the very engaged undergraduate, not even PhD, but really bachelor undergraduate students. She started in her second year and she was quite active from the very beginning, I think also in participating in the discussion groups. And I think she, because she was always very interested in primates, she got then in contact with Eduardo, and because of FINE and because of the link that I have with Eduardo, she got in contact with Eduardo and his David Woods, who was then doing the PhD in Peru, which was my former PhD field site. And so long story short, but essentially she got this opportunity to go to Peru, was partly funded by you, wasn't she? Because she did some of the FINE short things for you. She did some other videos, I think, as well. And I think being then 1 year at Peru also gave her the connections to then, better actually where she is now, but you wrote that she's now at the Leakey Foundation. So it did help at an early stage. I don't think FINE is going to give somebody like Sari or me a position. This is probably not going to happen, but it can help, I think, the younger students, and it can also help. Actually, I'm often recommending to a colleague who's not really a behavioral ecologist, but he's interested in certain topics. So I recommended to him the talk on for example, the talk on the fungus beetles, because it was on networking and he's more on the stats side. And he was absolutely fascinated, and he's always loving it when I'm telling him about specific topics that I think he might be interested in. So it's also helping in that respect. But to come back to Eleanor, and students, I think what Carsten said is, and also Zulema essentially touched on it, I think we are thinking about the kind of students that are really interested in everything and go also to completely different topics and interdisciplinary talks and philosophy and history, and we are ourselves interested in these kind of things. But let's face it, when we were students, probably 90% of our co-students also weren't. And that's exactly what's happening now as well. But we have forgotten about our peers that were also not interested in broader topics. So in our classes, we quite often have a lot of students who are just focused on, I mean, we have seriously had people complaining there are not enough tigers on our program. So they are, and depends probably also on the kind of university you're at. But there are students who are very focused on their taxon. There are students who are, we have biology students who don't go to field trips when we are going outside to learn species identification, because that's for the students on the zoology program. I still don't get it, but anyway. So, and there are students on the zoology program that would think that a talk about amoeba can't be interesting. I tried to tell them that the two best talks I ever heard one was on slime molds and one was on fruit flies. And I'm definitely, I always introduce myself as the furry cuddly animal behavioral ecologist. But still, and many people don't get that. And I think we don't have to pine after those students that aren't interested in broader things. We just need to try to make sure that we get those students that are interested and that are broad-minded and that probably want to stay in science, because as Carsten said, many of them won't stay on in science, and they that's not why they study, that's not what they want to do. So if we don't get them, it's their loss. Let's concentrate on the ones that really will benefit from this.
Thank you. So we're going to go first with Will and then with Clara.
I just had a few ideas kind of stemming from this discussion. And like one of the things that I was first saw was actually like the Animal Behavior podcast that Matt Zippel ran for a long time, long before I ever found out about this YouTube channel. One of the things that I thought that specific like media presentation did very well was actually like they end each podcast with a more kind of like frank discussion, either about how that person has come into science, a current thing that they're working on that's like science adjacent. Maybe it's teaching, maybe it's some of their work with equity and inclusion, whatever, right? I feel like that's one of those things that can help build community and help particularly like younger students see humanity or whatever, you know, in these kind of big, scary professorial figures. I think that's one example of like, you know, there's 10 minutes of the fine that was kind of dedicated to tell us like how you got to this point, right? Maybe at the very beginning. And that was just kind of like a structured component of the talks. That would help bring people up to speed who haven't been a part of this community for a long time, and maybe have a little bit more personal connection to the speakers as they're learning about their science as well. The other thing that I want to just mention that I thought some like presenters do extremely well is kind of like figure out where to start the talk, you know, or sometimes they can launch from a pretty kind of like narrowed, focused perspective. Either if there's like some way to kind of build playlists on YouTube where you could have a student or someone else kind of talk about why these sets of videos are together, why they're answering these kind of core questions in biology, and put them in a framework that way. I understand it's like very hard probably to organize like an entire semester of talks that are around a theme, but if you could post hoc kind of like collate them, I think that would give people a starting place to see like, oh, if I want to understand parental conflict, here's 10 different people who have thought about this from different perspectives. Or if I want to understand behavior and parasitism, here's 10 different people who have thought about this from models to experimental to empirical systems, whatever. I think like some of those things could decrease the kind of activation energy, both from a personal connection level for younger students, and then also for a kind of conceptually, how am I going to begin to think about what my spiders or my buffalo are doing in the context of more general biological questions. I think there could be kind of some things that are from extant resources. You know, we could build this to be a little bit more conducive.
Thank you, Will. I'll just comment on that because we're in the same institution. It is something we have not managed to get done. We have a very poor, we don't even have a decent search engine for all the videos and the talks. And I don't know if you know that our colleagues in stats at data science at Yale, every semester have something that's called Project Match. Email me about that. I presented, that's an invitation for any of us, you, myself, to say, listen, guys, we're trying to figure this out. And I did present to them saying, listen, we would like somebody who can help us query the 150 talks and combine. I mean, this is a very simple computer science task. How do we produce a collection of videos? I mean, with AI, looking for taxa or looking for images or whatever, and have a collective, having a collection of. We haven't done it, in part because we get all excited and we go back to our normal life and we just don't have it in us to have the time or the resources. But I agree with you, that would be amazing. So let's keep talking. We're gonna get together, all of us at Yale, studying behavior before the semester is over. That's my commitment to you. We've already discussed it with Vanessa. So we're going now to Clara, and then to I need I need SKRS. You'll have to repeat your name to me when it's your turn, please. I apologize, I didn't get it. Clara, you're next. You're muted. Still muted, Clara?
It's not unmuting.
No.
Let me see if
And
we
I don't
can
know,
do it from here.
can we force the same way we can mute people? Can we
No, I
unmute?
can answer to unmute, but I cannot unmute it. I'm
Oh, there you
trying.
go. There you
There
go.
we
There you are,
go.
Clara. Go ahead.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Clara B. Jones, social evolution, retired. I just like to say that I think it might be beneficial to be active on Twitter, X again, and maybe expand your participation on X. I find for my own uses that there are quite a few social biologists and animal behaviorists who are registered on X. And if Fine could follow a large number of those people, they might follow back and learn about the lectures. Also, I think someone said that some human interest messaging from the lecturers, especially from the younger ones, might be of interest to more younger potential observers. And I think that if somebody suggested that, I think that's a really good idea to maybe talk about how that person got interested in social behavior and went to graduate school and long-term plans. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Clara. Perfect. You're next.
Hello everyone, I'm perfect again. So I just wanted to add from what it's Marin what said. So I heard what you were saying, but I just want to share a story about myself just for a minute. Is that when I completed my grade 12, I went to do my degree at the University of Western Cape, and I was coming from a black community where there are a lot of misconceptions with regards to science, snakes, everything, most of the time. So what I can say is that, I did my degree. My first year was good. My second year, that's when I started to fall in love with science, and that, for example, for me to fall in love with science, it took my lecture, to sort of put me there. So I want to say, from what you're saying, that even though there are students that they are in science, for example, they don't know what they're doing there, they don't have an end goal, they don't have, like a certain end point whereby, okay, I want to see myself here, I want to see myself as, a future scientist, for example. We shouldn't give up on those children, for example, because yes, we might not be able to change, 100% of them, but that 1% is also much important, so, yep.
Thank you.
I definitely didn't mean it this way, but you're completely right. We probably should try even harder. It's just probably the frustration sometimes, but you're completely right, yes.
Yeah, I think we should try harder, and most of the time, the lectures, they're the ones that have, like a stronger head, or sort of, they're the ones to make us fall in love with science. So
perfect. At the moment, there are 5 students at SKRS. Why do you think there's only one watching fine?
that's the thing. It depends. I feel like it's because you have to be in love with something. The moment you're in love with something, the moment you're eager to learn, the moment you're eager to expose yourself to a lot of things, and yeah, me myself personally, I always try, to ask them, you should join. It's nice, a lot of things are being discussed here, but I don't know what to say for them. It's just that it's to keep on trying to convince them. They will eventually get here. I promise. I know that.
So it's been fantastic. We've been talking for over an hour. We can keep talking. If there's we can keep doing what we've been doing. It's been great. Why don't we go through another round of inviting you? Any further thoughts? Maybe things that you shared in the survey. Remember that once again, you send us a survey and we barely had time to go through all of the responses thoughtfully. So if there's anything that you feel you want to bring up that maybe in your answers, but we didn't get to it, or anything else. Before I go, we forgot. I was supposed to mention next week's talk by Mike Webster. Give me a second because I forgot to do that. And I can quickly do it if you bear with me. Mike is at Cornell University, and he'll be presenting. Bear with me. Where am I? I have the message ready to be sent. These are all the little things that, my goodness, they do take time. So my message is ready to be sent sometime later today. But there's Mike. So he'll be talking about sexual signals and divergence in Australian fairy wrens, from fins to behavior. Is that genes? I don't know what fins is. That has to be genes. From genes to behavior to speciation. So that's going to be our meeting next week with Mike Webster from Cornell University, before I forget to announce that. Like we said, some of you suggested potential speakers. We're definitely going to look at them, planning already the 6th year of fine, starting in the fall of 2025.
Kundalani had a question, I think, or a
Lindelani,
comment.
sorry, I missed it. Where are you? Yes, go
Yeah.
ahead. Another of our successful, wonderful stories that makes us so proud. Go ahead, Lindelani.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So my name is Rindrani Maguya, and I'm currently a postdoc with the CNRS, as also a research manager at the Cyclone Kuru Research Station. So currently I'm in Europe to do some lab work for my field work, and I think to echo what everyone has been saying, because I was a bit late, sorry for arriving late to the meeting. But I also used recently the fine teachings for my own teaching when I started, and which I found very beneficial. And also just with respect to getting interest from students, I think sometimes it helps when you do have a supervisor or someone superior who tries to push you into it, because I think as students we are always very ignorant, not necessarily ignorant, but we don't always take things seriously. But if we have that person who's always pushing you and helping you to see that this is actually important, it can be quite helpful. Some students do need that extra push, just so that they can participate. I'm one of those students. And also for me, the Find has been quite an informative medium, not only for behavioral ecology, but even for other topics I didn't even know about until I started watching Find. So um, with respect to expanding our topics, I think it will also still be something to consider, because we might draw in more people to come and join us, and even expand our. I think when you so focused on a certain topic and you hear something else, you get ideas about your own topic, because you're getting that sort of outside the box thinking. So yeah.
Thank you.
And I thought, Eduardo, one other thing, two things I guess I'd like to say. One is that even though it would be wonderful to have more students participating, I still think that one of the things that is really cool about Fine is that we do have people, ranging all the way from, I think, undergraduates to people who are retired, and interacting in a more intimate space than is normally possible, like in department seminars and so on. And so, and I think with great respect from everybody towards everybody else, which I think is, makes a big difference. So that's one thing, and obviously getting more students would be wonderful, but I think we also need to acknowledge what we have and how different and special it is. And then my other thought, and I think I wrote this in my survey, was that one thing I would personally like to see is discussions about topics that are not specific to social evolution. And I'm thinking, for example, of some of the discussions we had early on about p-values and stats and the use and misuse of stats, that sort of thing. I found that extremely interesting and also useful. Also, I remember discussions about the need for more essentially natural history and how difficult it is to get certain types of studies published because either the sample size is small, which almost necessarily it has to be small, depending on the taxon we're working with, but also how difficult it is to get observational studies published, and whether that should be the case, or what we could do. So sort of, to change that. And so sort of broader topics that are not specific just to social evolution, or even for that matter to population biology or any of the other things that have been mentioned, but to science as a whole, or at least to biology as a whole. So I just wanted to throw that out. And I'm pretty sure I expressed that in the survey. I did it sort of in a hurry, so I'm not positive if I did that, but I think I did. So I just wanted to mention it in person.
Thank you. Sari, you're next.
I kind of think that given that I live in Mexico, I studied in the US, and I'm actually from Europe, and that diversity and such is kind of a topic that, well, now in the States, it's not a topic anymore, but in the rest of the world, it's still a topic. That Fine, although I do recognize that Fine is doing an effort, that there should be more of an effort to invite Global South colleagues to as speakers to find. I think that there is too much of a skew towards European and US colleagues, and it would be, and I recognize that there are colleagues from the Global South invited. It's not that I'm not recognizing it, but I think that we should be just a little bit more effort out there, especially if you want to, like, I can't remember if we had a colleague from Africa giving a talk. I might miss it or
I think from Africa, from the people who presented, there's a higher percentage of people in Africa working on animal behavior than from Europe. There's just so very, very few. I tried to find people outside of South Africa, and I basically did not find anyone. And we invited so many people from South Africa, the percentage is maybe even higher. But it's a fact that outside of South Africa, there's nearly nobody doing real animal behavior. In Namibia, Botswana, East Africa, wherever I looked, I mean, they mainly do something that's related to agriculture. That's just the fact.
I just want to add, and I know maybe you mean this. There is no evidence out there to judge the effort. We can only assess the outcome, and Carsten has spoken to that. So the truth is that you don't know how many messages I've sent to people in Latin America who did not answer, blah blah blah. So it's more complicated than that, and we get the outcome the same way that I said our sample of the survey is extremely biased. The sample of the speakers, it's hard for those, unless you're in the process, you don't know how that pool of candidates, what are the processes underneath it that generated. I agree with you. We'd like to see more talks. Carsten has been so insistent on this in the good sense, but it's been hard. You have no idea how many messages go out, and then you try and then don't answer. And of course, the same happens with every country in the world. Don't get me wrong. It is that the lack of response is higher, but the pool is smaller. So,
but I also want to mention something there, Eduardo, and it's like I would like to encourage you, like all of you, to give us names. Like sometimes we are unaware of people, and whenever you suggest someone and we invite them, or at least it's been my case, I often get a positive answer. So it's cool that first we don't know everyone and we might not be aware of everyone doing things, not even like within Latin America or in Africa either. And so if you know someone that you think it's a good fit, just send us an email and we will be really happy to invite them. We are looking forward to have more people from the Global South in our seminar.
Yeah, and I suggest
we have hold on, Suleyman. We have Nelson first. So Nelson first, and then if you want, you can go next, Suleyman, after Nelson.
Okay.
I think Eduardo and Adriana was already saying things that I wanted to say, but one of the sad things about Latin America is that as Latin American, we don't study too much our ecosystems, and many of our ecosystems are studied by people from Europe or from the States. But there are so many interesting people from Europe or from the States that work for here for so long and involve so many Latin American people that I'm sure that many Latin Americans, they just gonna show up to the presentations because there are people that encourage to work in Latin Americans work in Latin America. I don't know if I explain it well, but I don't know, there are several people that I will be so happy to see the presentation, even if they are not Latin Americans, just because they encourage Latin Americans to work here, and I don't know, like Carsten, they work with people from Africa and they try to push and support people from the places they are working on.
One of the ideas that was mentioned in the survey that addresses some of Sari's suggestions were all well received. That we have toyed with these ideas. My English is not my language. Right now, I'm talking to Nelson. I'm talking to those of you in the audience for whom English is not your native language. So it's an additional hurdle to present. You're young. English is not your language. But one of the things we've been thinking is, was in the survey. What if we somehow find ways in which every so often, either there's a Latin American component of fine, or every so often there's a talk that's not in English. That could be something to explore, because it will make it so much more likely, much easier for, so that would be something to consider. Who's coming next?
I think I was next.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that I mentioned a couple of names from Latin America in my survey. Unfortunately, one of them I have no idea because he's now retired, but he just wrote an academic book, published an academic book. So he obviously still continues to be interested in, in science and academia. But the other thing, I wonder whether people, for example, like Jean Altman and Susan Albert's group in Kenya, because I know they have had at times African students, graduate students, maybe contacting them and seeing if they know of people from Africa who would be able to give a talk might be worthwhile. And the other thing, in terms of your last idea, Eduardo, the one time I have seen it done very effectively was a bird meeting that I went to in Mexico, in Monterrey. I actually went for the bird watching, but it was very interesting because they had talks in English or in Spanish, but then the PowerPoints were in the other language. So if the person, was giving a talk in Spanish, then the PowerPoint would be in English and vice versa. And that seemed to work really, really well. And I suspect it's not something that we could do, like have a lot of our talks like that. But I think having something like that once in a while might be worthwhile, especially if we want somebody to speak and they express concerns about the language. That could be suggested. And there was something else, but it flew out of my mind. So if it comes back, I'll mention it.
Maren, you're next.
I was just thinking, perhaps if we, I was thinking about what Carsten said in terms of that there are no people who are studying animal behavior in certain countries, and I think Alvin also said, well, Carsten anyway said it. Maybe if we have at least occasionally a broader topic, so ecology more than behavior, because I was thinking we have a recently a new colleague from Iran, and we have also had students from Iran and other near Asian countries. They often are more interested in ecology rather than in animal behavior. They might still be working on animals, but it might be more ecological. And maybe by having some more ecological topics, we might be able to gain more speakers that are from those countries that work on the ecology of on the ecology rather than on the animal behavior, so that we at least get them involved. But East Asia still remains a problem in terms of time zones. So maybe that is now a different topic, point two. It's just very difficult to get US plus Europe plus East Asia or Australia at the time. We had one speaker from Australia, I remember, and I think it was midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning or something. I wouldn't have functioned at this time of day, but maybe we should have occasionally stupid hour from our perspective in US and Europe, and just have something that is at times that are suitable for for other countries and not just trying to arrange it so that it fits for Europe, South America, North America. And I mean, Africa at least is sort of also in the same kind of time zone, so it doesn't get completely out of but East Asia, I don't know, it's just too different, the time zone. So we need something to get them involved, if possible.
Maybe we have just a quick follow-up there. Maybe we have a seminar on a weird time schedule for us, that it's a more normal schedule for them, just one, and we announce it like very consistently. So because of the time change, we get it wrong even with just the saving time. So we'll need to make a better effort there. Okay, I'm taking notes on that. Thank you, Mara.
So we forgot, do you guys think we should stop? Do we have people watching us via YouTube, or should we stop the live streaming? Karsten, any thoughts on this?
There is no one on the YouTube, just so you know.
Okay, should I stop it?